Okay, we are live. Rafik.
Hey, hi. Able to hear me?
That's clear.
Yeah. Welcome everyone to the Chennai Tech Radar. It's one of the virtual conference exactly after 1 year we started. We have close to 700 plus people now. Very happy to see the growth. Thank you, Naren, for keeping it very live with a lot of Kubernetes and the other sessions month. Every month we had one or other thing, especially during COVID situation, we were able to get more sessions done. And yeah, today it's a reinvent our own take about reinvent. It's one of the opportunities all of us wanted to stay in the AWS reinvent when it's happening in the Vegas. But knowing the COVID situation, good to be virtual and then talk about this. I'm definitely seeing cloud adoption is going to be, as all of us saw in the Andy's presentation also, cloud adoption is definitely going to go high. If you look at the DevOps moment, it so started with the cloud adoption was happening. People were slowly going into data center, but DevOps gave kind of very good acceleration to this, and people started using moving into private cloud. Now the reinvent is one good thing which I like about it is that the in the DevOps the only definition we all talk about is high quality, which we were doing before also, but faster. The faster is one thing which is very much relevant to the reinvent, right? AWS, whenever it comes to every year, they tell so many new things about the reinvent, which gets very well connected with the innovation happening in the labs of AWS, and we get to use a lot of services, the improvements, and all that. This is one of the exciting moments most of the IT guys in the cloud world looking forward for. Yeah, there are many other clouds also. I don't want to be biased only with AWS, but definitely yes. This is for the AWS today. Yeah, Naren, I can hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Rafik, for that intro. Partially, the reason why AWS is able to really connect with the needs of the customers is that actually they are in touch with the customers very frequently. Even in our organization, as we know, they are in frequent touch about what we are doing, what are the solutions we are providing, and how AWS can help. And I think this becomes like a feedback loop, and then they were able to provide solutions that really meets the key needs of the customers in the coming years. I've seen there are lots of things that we have added up to this session. I will ask people to stay back so that there are some more interesting key features and architectural constraints they've added. It's very interesting topics to discuss. And as we know, this AWS was this is a crazy year as we know it. It's because of the COVID situation or whatever it is. Because of that, all these virtual events are kicking in, and AWS is of course is not an exception. And then they have a huge virtual event that is free to attend. And the advantage is it's global, right? It's not happening in a particular region. They are able to provide it globally, and they are able to cover three simultaneous time zones at the same time, repeating the sessions again and again. And then there are also sessions available video on demand. You can go back and watch. But the tiring part is there are so many sessions. There are around more than 50 tracks happening, and then there are like thousands of sessions. The idea of this video or this session or this discussion is all about summarizing what we felt in the first week of reInvent 2020, AWS reInvent 2020. We picked up the key things, our favorite things. Of course, even we cannot cover the whole series of sessions that AWS produced, but I think we were able to cover most of it, and then we are just trying to summarize it here. So this is my name is Narayanan, and you can reach me at Narayan anywhere. And welcome everyone who is joining us live in this video, and also for the people who will be watching it later. The video is available in YouTube, and the same link can be shared across. And I think I would like everybody to introduce yourself a small bit, and then we'll go ahead with the slides.
Hey everyone, this is Shiva here with an industrial experience of 15 years. AWS and Kubernetes have been one of my favorite subjects. My first time with this take on AWS kind of an event. Looking forward to interact with all of you.
Yeah, hi, this is Ravi Shankar. I'm
Hi,
having 10 years
this
of IT experience.
Yeah, Ravi, go ahead.
Yeah, so today we'll be watching around the AWS reInvent. What are the key takeaways for past 3 days? Let's get together and discuss more. Thank you.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Rajesh, do you
This
want
is
to go?
Rajesh, and like I said, I've been in DevOps and cloud, and I'm a big fan of whatever that's happening that is related to cloud and DevOps. And yeah, I'm eager to kickstart this session with the rest of our team.
Yeah.
Okay,
This
awesome.
one thing I can add to that, Naren, the very good conversation you mentioned about the virtual, right? Remember we being in the Mumbai reInvent a couple of years
Right.
back, and we had to choose between the tracks, and we divided ourselves that you go to this track, I'll go to the other track, but this is the much better at convenience. We can watch the tracks. Yeah, it sounds
Yeah,
like a better
I was,
option than being physically.
yeah, exactly. I was resonating the same yesterday while watching this in my mobile. I was like, I was exactly remembering this Mumbai thing. We flight there, and it was a free session, so it was a huge queue. And then
Yeah,
every track, it's like once the session is ending, and then the next interesting session could be like three turns away. That will be like a kilometer to walk to find that room, and by that time the room is already full, and then probably you will leave that, go back to the counters that are outside, look at what our presentation they have, pick up some swags, and to be frank, we were able to attend very less sessions because of that, running around, and then watching those sessions. Very few inputs where we were able to take out of it, but I think this was very interesting. I really liked it because I was able to even watch it in my mobile while lying down. I was able to stream it from my mobile to my television and watch it around. And again, there is a video on demand. I can watch it the time I want. It was all very interesting actually. Only thing is that the interaction, seeing people in person, I think that's the biggest problem of the year anyway. That's the only thing. Other than that, it was all nice and good. It's very interesting, and I would like to really see how AWS has actually put this together. This huge, live event happening, streaming around across all these people. To be
yeah,
frank, KubeCon I attended. I think some of you also attended. It wasn't that clean experience. I would say the streaming was not that great, but AWS, of course, as we expected, it was like it's very clean and clear about how it's streaming and across the devices, right? So yeah,
no doubt.
it's a
Yeah,
great thing.
the amount of information they have, sometimes replayable is much better option because we may not digest everything on the first go. Sometimes we have to relook at. I think the online is much awesome.
Except that we are
Yeah.
missing Vegas and Mumbai for a reason. Definitely, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Some people who doesn't know me, this is Rafiq Sayed. 20. Now I stopped telling 20 years, but 2 decades of experience in the IT world. That sounds much better. Yes. DevOps evangelist for last 10 years, being evangelizing DevOps for a couple of telecom and the banking and the gaming and gambling companies, and now into the ADP. Yeah. Good to see people online.
Awesome. So we will start with the keynotes. And as we know, this is just the first week of AWS reInvent 2020. So of course, they themselves have allocated these weeks for focusing on different topics. It's clearly visible in their agenda about what they want to try in different weeks. Right? It's just the first week. So we'll just pitch in and then say what is a good summary of the keynotes. I think Rajesh will take over explaining about very high level key points, and of course everybody can pitch in about their views.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Naren. So usually if you have visited the AWS reInvent 2019 or 2018, usually there used to be only two keynotes. The one is from obviously the CEO of AWS, that is Andy Jassy, and the other would be from the CTO, that is Werner Rogels. But this time, looks like 2020 is special for AWS as well. So they have planned 5 keynotes this year. So the first one, which we are going to obviously discuss, is Andy Jassy's keynote. And the second one they had this last week is a partner session keynote or something. And in the second week, we are going to have an dedicated machine learning keynote to be taken by Swami Subramanian. And we have an infrastructure keynote. And last but not the least, the keynote from the CTO, Werner Rogels. So, like I said, it's a big thing. And usually, reInvent also happens in a week time or something. But this time, they are going for almost 3 weeks. And you can guess how large is the volume is going to be to cover the topics and everything that we are going to discuss. So speaking of keynotes and from Andy Jassy's session, the main focus were on compute and storage. And now on your screen, you can see we are going to discuss few points about compute. The first thing that excited most people about the Andy Jassy's keynote on compute is the launch of Mac OS instances for EC2. I mean, everybody was, like they were doing some testing or performance testing and everything. They were like, were really surprised that AWS was, like starting with it. And we always know that always they save the best for the last. But this time we can see that they are going all guns blazed and they opened the session with this Mac OS instances. And apart from that, we have homegrown AWS Graviton 2 instances, which they have processed from their ARM processors and everything. And
about that Mac OS, Rajesh, about that Mac OS instances, I'm not sure whether you shared it or there's a joke going on around, like if you can pay for a month of that Mac OS, you can instead buy a Mac Mini instead and then have it because it's just that much, because they are telling for an hour it's more than $1.5 almost. So which is like a huge amount comparing that. But there are lots of advantages. People are also seeing that they will be able to use it for testings and things that they are doing. Now people are running around using their desktops or even laptops to do this kind of testing. So it supports all the mobile, their iMac, iPad, all those devices supported. And of course, the pay-as-you-go, the concept and the utility-based billing, it's all the advantages that we'll see anyway coming up. But it's not very new, right? Azure is already providing it for years now. But AWS, I think, for the AWS customers, it's a great news. Even in our organization, we see lots of people are interested because we are also doing lots of native developments, and then this is going to be very useful.
Get ready for weather.
One thing I can add is that enough of seeing Windows and Linux images. Good to have Mac OS.
Talking about,
we don't need to use VMware emulator now.
Talking about Mac OS images, right? I mean, for people who don't know, it's Mac OS, iOS, iPad OS, TV OS, and Watch OS. A lot of things there, right? So, and one thing is like this traditional small scale startups who start with having a kind of an open source Jenkins server to build their Android apps or whatever it is, right? I mean, they always had an issue to connect to a costly EC2 instance which can run Mac OS, but that's at least reality now without having multiple hops, right? So that's one takeaway that I can talk about.
Cool.
And if we come down, we have Amazon's homegrown Graviton 2. It's like they are building their own ARM processor. And I guess that's the trend of 2020, right? I mean, we could see now latest Apple MacBooks, they have moved from Intel and they have started their own processor and, M1 processor, and they are going to supply all the MacBooks going forward in their processor. So it's Graviton 2. And we have this Habana Gaudi based EC2 instances that is purely custom built for machine learning. So whoever are building these machine learning models and everything, so it's like they have their hand on this EC2 instances which are powered by Intel. So speaking of EC2, these are the main takeaways that I could find from Andy Jassy's keynote. And
great,
So EKS.
So the Lambda, right? Lambda container support and building Lambda-based applications. These container support is one thing, but there is a huge list of Lambda or serverless related sessions that are there in AWS. We are going to cover key of them, and the way actually people are using the serverless technology, specifically Lambda, of course, along with the supported technologies like even bridge and stuff like that. It's awesome, and then we are going to see it very soon in upcoming slides. So stay put. It's going to be very interesting. There are a few things that were really I was standing on my toes to appreciate that. Yeah.
Yep, and talking about the other interesting, how can such session happen without talking about Kubernetes, right? Amazon EKS Anywhere is a preview feature that's available in 2021, but then a lot of excitements around. Think of a hybrid organization where people are running different distros and masked versions of Kubernetes across off-prem and on-prem data center. How can you ease the administration pains of having the same versions, or looking at single point of vulnerability fixing rather than looking at different distros, right? It's much a relief that EKS Anywhere is given to us. One good thing about EKS Anywhere is like the yes, this is my favorite. Of course, I've been always a fan of Kubernetes GUIs. The EKS console, and think of managing your EKS Anywhere sitting in your data center through an AWS console that's there, which is the EKS console, right? It gives a lot of advantages there. We'll touch base upon that. But what powers EKS Anywhere is the EKS D or EKS distro. Amazon has come out, said that we are kind of having this as an open source now. Take it, go install in your data centers, run the Kubernetes versions that's tried, tested, and built for huge workloads that billions of other customers are using around the world, right? So that gives a big relief. So this is a story stitched together. Basically, the EKS distro with EKS supported anywhere plus the console view of it, right? So what a great story it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, the absolute standout about the other thing about Lambda is that we always, when we run Lambda, we get built to the nearest 100 milliseconds, right? So irrespective of whatever we run for maybe 60 milliseconds or 70 or anything, we always get built to the nearest 100 milliseconds. Now AWS has come to that as well, and you can see that now we can have 1 millisecond billing for Lambda as well, and which Andy claimed that it lowers the cost up to 70%. Again, we can see they are listening to their customers and adapting to their customers' need. So that is a key takeaway for me as far as Lambda billing is concerned.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
So talking about next, last but not the least in compute, that is Proton. So if you see Proton and if it's a description or anything, I don't think if it exactly fits in the compute part, but I don't know, they have included it. So it's nothing like it's an fully managed deployment service where developers have these templates or something, yes, almost similar to the CloudFormation templates, where they can just go in and pass variables, like if it is a test environment or if it is an QA environment or if it is a pre-production or something, and just they can click the parameters, and the CloudFormation templates takes care of provisioning those resources and everything, such that all this comes under as a single stack, so that AWS clearly wants to move this to developer friendly. I mean, it's like they are pushing it for the no ops kind of thing, because they don't want developers to concentrate more on operation side or something. So I could say that is one main thing that they are trying to accomplish with AWS Proton.
So what is this? It's more like, does it support like programming languages to do the same activity, or how it is?
It's most like it's written mostly in YAML. It's they claim that it will, in future, integrate well with the third-party vendors like Terraform or some other thing, provisioners or something. But for me, on the whole, when I looked at, I mean, we obviously have latest slides, Proton, where I could, detailedly explain. It's more or less like they have added one extra step for the cloud formation. Yeah, it's more that. And with Proton, we can use this for containers and AWS Fargate as well. So that is an added advantage.
Okay. The next one is the storage. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think talking about Proton, the three key things that AWS has put together as benefits of using it is like setting guardrails, which means it's like a template-based approach. We have a working pre-tested stack and a template that's available, and that's what they mean actually. And the flexibility of using it, we have to see how it adapts to the requirement, because more of these kind of things are done with an open source world today. How AWS can go ahead and enforce these guardrails with an open source community is something that I'm looking forward to definitely. The rest of the two things that AWS publishes here is always that we talk about in the DevOps world is best practices and developer productivity, right? So just that guardrail and how does open community help towards that, right? Is what is my interest with Proton here.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if we come to storage part, I mean, it's most demanded, I would say, like most demanded or most needed. Everyone needs to store something, right? Maybe it's client's data, or if it's customer data, or if you want to store application data or anything. So in storage, as far as EC2 is concerned, we could see now they have introduced GP3 volumes, which is an next generation of GP2. And we could see IO2 Block Express, and they claim it's IO2 is nothing but it's more or less like related to our SSD disks, where we can see high performance, high throughput and everything. So these are the next gen things that they have introduced in EBS as far as EC2 is concerned. So, and they claim that the performances will be still more faster, and I mean, I don't know, they didn't put any official graphs or any something, but they claim it to be 40% to 70% faster than the existing current generation storage options that we have for EC2.
Yeah, here is my favorite takeaway of the GP3 volume actually. So whenever we kind of provision IOPS versus the capacity, GP2 always gave the option of choosing a higher capacity and then a higher IOPS. But then with GP3, the flexibility of choosing capacity and IOPS are independent, as they say in the announcement. Looking forward for using these kinds of volumes. And then I look at a lot of other optimizations like cost with GP3 volume and the maximum capacity. These are some things that I look at GP3 volume. Always a storage fan of AWS.
Yeah.
I think all of us have to revise our organization stack one more time. I'm sure we have over-provisioned resources, unnecessary IOPS. I think it's better to reuse that, and then we'll of course gain some cost benefits, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, definitely. And now if we come,
we definitely moved from counting the 1,000 RPMs and all that days, right? Now you just go click it, and then we are picking the best of the best. Later we are deciding to downgrade it. First is to go for the best, see the application is working, performance is more important, then we'll go for the optimization. So yeah, FinOps is another one concept everybody is talking about around the AWS now. Also, we can check from the point of the FinOps, because any cost initially used to be CapEx and OpEx, and then we used to give the overall discussion how much CapEx going to be to the finance guys. Today, one of the engineer will go and click a button. He can change the entire costing altogether. So the FinOps aspect of something we can go through in the AWS ReInvent also definitely one thing to monitor how cost we can optimize, and how is it helping the entire operations world, right? Yeah, that's definitely a key takeaways.
Sure. Yeah. And if we switch to the last but not least in the storage section, we have databases. Amazon has this wide variety of databases starting from relational to non-relational. And in relational itself, we have many flavors, like they have their own Aurora SQL, and Postgres, Maria, Cassandra, and everything. So one thing that they always push, or they take care more, is their own Aurora serverless. I mean, when they first introduced this serverless in 2018 reInvent, I mean, people were going like crazy about this serverless thing. I mean, just imagine the like what all we have to do. I mean, leave aside the application where we do the hardening stuff, we are constantly upgrade the OS and packages and everything, but running database on EC2 instances and taking care of that as well, it's an like pain. And coming back to this serverless thing, it's AWS everything. So they take care of OS patching and constantly upgrading everything, so that all we have to do is maintain the data that is stored in the database and see whether it is like processing fine or not. So with this serverless, now they have introduced the serverless v2, which has like multi-AZ support, read replicas, parallel query, and everything. And they extensively brought this Babelfish for PostgreSQL. So just a word about that. So it's like a database migration service where you can, import your on-prem or database that's running on EC2 into Postgres. So I would say, and to be frank, they even made it an open source project, which is supposed to be available in GitHub from 2021. And contributors then contribute and take it forward wherever it goes.
Yeah, Babelfish is going to be the killer for Microsoft for sure. That's going to remove a lot of MS SQL to the PostgreSQL
Definitely.
migrations, make it so easy. That's a killer for Microsoft. Anybody from Azure, please keep watching it.
Yeah. And we can see Andy himself, he took a jab at Microsoft. I mean, that Microsoft, they were forcing the customers to buy that licenses, and it is only supposed to be helping only the Microsoft SQL servers that are running on Azure, not the other cloud providers. So it's like AWS was countering their move with this Babelfish, actually.
Yes. This is really exciting to see the Babelfish.
Talking about storage, how can we finish the session without an S3 update, right? I mean, our favorite topic. I mean, I come from a storage background. When I say that there is file storage and a block storage, is it not S3 is what people ask generally, right? So S3 started with something called as an eventual consistency, but then strong read after write consistency is what Amazon claims in this thing, right? So it's very exciting to see that. What do you mean by eventually consistent is if you have a replicated S3 bucket across two regions, eventually they will become consistent. But then now that they're moving towards strong, there goes the high availability content of it as well, right? So very a thing to watch out there.
Yeah, that reminds whenever we were looking at the AWS back in 2014, 15 kind of a time, this eventual consistency is something we never heard of it. Like I was like, this is the one thing I had to be knowing it if I'm talking about S3. It's like read after write and write after read. It's like such a confusing thing. Now it's like a strong consistency is going to make life much easier. And another one thing, if you notice in the S3, right, that multi-region replication, they made it easier now. So two destinations you can push at one shot. That's something is really going to help us now. Going into pushing it to one place and finding rsync way of doing it and sending it to another one is such a nonsense in the past. So now I'm sure that this is going to especially when you have that for a DR preparation or something, or continuous DR practices, if we are doing it, making sure that the syncs are happening is like is the critical one. Though you have a S3 with a good uptime, making sure that the rsync happening to the other destination is also another critical part. That they made it available with a click of a button now, which is another good aspect.
Think of this aspect also, Rafiq. Like earlier, there was this backup terminology of having backups and then archives, right? That was like two-step process. Now that S3 fast IOPS, we can definitely do it parallelly to an archive happening in a slow class of storage, right? That's the advantage that we see with this two-way replication at one shot, right? So
yes.
or two bucket replication. Yeah, that's one thing. And then I also wanted to bring this when you eventual consistency is another thing that is always favorite talking about S3 is durability. I mean, how could somebody define durability is always a question. I let the audience here to go explore what durability about S3 is if they don't know it yet.
Yeah.
You're talking about the number or the way it doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about different things like availability, reliability. What is this durability all about, right? And that too, durability of a storage, and that was like mind-boggling exercise when I first started to understand that. How could somebody say that storage is durable? My storage is definitely durable, is what everybody would say, right? So, but then it's the effect of putting an object, millions of objects into an S3 bucket, and what is the probability of losing one of it? That defines durability, I believe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially the photographers in the world of photography, right? Keeping the storage in the way we don't access it and all that. Leave it for S3 to take care of it. If you are not using it, they will take care of it, making it as a slow storage kind of thing. That's
S3 intelligent
in the entire dynamic. I used to keep open NAS at home. Making sure that all my photography is been copied to open NAS, and then making sure one more extra hard disk I have it for a handy if I have to quickly pick up photos, and then one USB. So all that is gone now. I moved everything to S3 bucket and then safe and secure somewhere else. I don't have to pay for so many cloud providers. Otherwise, Google always tempts me to buy extra storage, and when I buy a phone, they ask for extra storage. When you buy iCloud, that also asks for, like, no, S3 is one point for me. I'm keeping everything there, and just organizing our data became so easy now.
So to sum it up, Andy Jassy's keynotes and this keynote session, like I said, there were actually about Amazon Connect, which is helps in this call center kind of thing and everything. And in Andy Jassy's keynote itself, we saw some of the partners who are using AWS, like JP Morgan Chase or this new Boom, who are going to be venturing into the air travel with the supersonic flights or everything. They had some couple of sessions and they were explaining how AWS helped them to achieve their targets and everything. And like I said, machine learning, Andy did touch it. I mean, he announced a few new things in the pipeline for AWS SageMaker and TensorFlow and everything, but he saved the best for Swami, who is going to take this a dedicated machine learning keynote, which is supposed to start this Tuesday. So if any machine learning enthusiasts, I guess you should definitely watch that keynote, to get the first-hand experience of what AWS is going to reinvent in the machine learning space.
Watch that or wait for our next week's summary. Right. So the last but not the least I see here is Amazon Glue. I think it's more like building your data stores and then cataloging the data. Again, there is a coming up architecture discussion. That's where we will discuss about how it is used in Lego or Lego. I don't know anymore how to call it. I think it's Lego. We'll see that. The serverless is the key topic, right? It's as Rajesh mentioned, like when they introduced it like a couple of years back or even 4 years back, like people were going crazy, and there are lots of startups that are built around serverless. There are lots of people who are like now in top using serverless or supporting serverless or evangelizing serverless, right? The keys. The key component, like when we say serverless in AWS, I think all of us will immediately remember Lambda, and then but they have a suite of services available in AWS to support this overall serverless architecture. There was also a session on well-architected framework for serverless. So they were talking about some kind of patterns to use and things like that. we'll probably try to cover it somewhere at the end. But I was very much I was going through these serverless related sessions, and I was really interested in these three sessions that I thought could be very interesting to discuss because they are of different directions, like different industries, different domains, and how they are really using serverless. Right. Some of these were really mind blowing to me, like that we will be able to really use serverless in this fashion, and then make the whole organization run just using lambdas and other serverless resources. To be frank, I was unable to think about it in the past about whether we can have a whole architecture built around it. We'll see some examples. The first one was from Danilo Poccia, and then he was talking about analyzing data at scale with AWS Lambda, right? This is more about linking, doing analytics of data and data sciences and everything using Lambda, right? So this is a kind of a different discussion. So I will come to that. So we'll go in a different order, right? So I will start about the Lego because I wanted to sort it like Lego is something with very easier example that everybody can follow. They were talking about the order placement and how the payment is done and how it is processed. They were also talking about how when a customer, select if there is a product that they are looking in the Lego. For example, they are looking for a Lego set in their portal, and then you are unable to find that Lego set. So you can click on a way to say, okay, the stock is not available. Notify me when the stock is available, right? So basically, this is going to trigger an email. They are going to store it somewhere. Whenever the stock is available, they are going to notify this customer. This looks like pretty simple, but the way they have implemented using Lambda and everything was like amazing. And we can imagine the based on the customer base that they have, I think it's meaningful to have such a setup. So that's what it is. So in simpler term, it is like this, right? A customer goes to lego.com, says I don't find the stock in stock, so notify me when the stock is available, gets stored, and then when the stock is available from the stock checker, they email back. It's supposed to be as simple as that from a business requirement point of view, right? But what they have built is this, right? It looks a little complex, but I think it is necessary because they don't want to make mistakes in dealing with customers, right? Nobody wants to make that if they want to retain any customers. So they want to ensure that it's all happening in time, and also it's not overloading their systems. So basically what happens, I'll try to be fast here. I don't want to get into details about it. Of course, watch the original video presented by President from Lego, architect. I have provided the link. It was very interesting. So to start with, it's basically so somebody is placing that request. So this is more about this backend stock notification, right? But if you see, it's more like a request station. It goes to whether the product is available. If it's not, it makes everything they build around this something a component called Amazon Event Bridge, right? Event Bridge is more like a bus. You can imagine the buses that we used to use in the past, like a decade back. I remember TIPCO, and I know there are other buses being used across, and this is one like that. So all it does is it's more like it plays a role of an choreographer, right? So it makes sure that okay, there's a request coming in. Based on the request, it redirects to the places where it is needed. So it's more like an event bus, and then the events are getting pushed, right? So automatically it goes to a Lambda to register that information. Okay, he is interested in that stock. It gets stored to a Lambda email store, right? And at the same time, it also once the stock is available, then there's a notification orchestrator. This actually sends an email, right? Now there is one more thing. Once the email reaches to the email dispatcher, again a Lambda function, they actually use Amazon SES to send the email. The advantage that they say is every email that they send they will also get a feedback of each of these emails. The feedback in the sense it will keep track of whether the email is really opened, whether the email is rejected, whether the email is deleted or whatever it is. So they can track how the email is really processed by the customer, and that information is fed back to them as an events. And then they will again use that information to understand how many people who are really looking for the stock is actually buying it once the stock is available, and these kind of analytics. So it's like, if you see, it's all connected. So this is like a small piece, but out of this, they are also extracting the information that are important to really retain the customer, make the customer happy with any new functionalities that they want. So this is the smallest diagram that they showed. There was also another one that explained about the actual product purchase flow, right? I'm not sure whether I have it, but I didn't put it because it's a huge one, but you can go around it. But the question is, the point is this. So they just use Lambda, Event Bridge. If you see everywhere, it's just Lambda, Event Bridge, Amazon SCS, and then a normal storage in DynamoDB. And then they were able to put this whole thing together. And it's all serverless, meaning only when there is an email coming in from a customer for that request, these Lambdas are getting triggered. If there is no customer, if there is no out of stock, for example, for the popular products, then these Lambdas are never used and they don't have to pay anything, right? So typically what we would have developed, this could be an REST API endpoint, which will be triggered by something, and this REST API endpoint will be living in an EC2 instance, and then you'll be paying for the EC2 instance because the service has to be running, right? Because you don't know when you will receive it. So it's just a different thought process, and then how they are putting together and using it, it's very, very interesting. That's from Lego, right? The key takeaways are these, right? Serverless is everywhere. It's available everywhere. They are using it everywhere in the whole architecture, even for your product placement, payment, everywhere they are using just Lambdas and then related serverless components, and they were able to run a huge organization like Lego with just that. So it's something that we might have to keep in our back of our head when we are deciding new solutions, right? And then Event Bridge, and also they were also expanding about step functions. So each of these small boxes that we are talking about, whether the product ability is there or not, even within the product status check, it's actually a state diagram, right? So it's like a small flow diagram that is there that actually does the actual activity. It's not a single small program. It's a flow, and that flow they are using step function. So step function is more like for orchestrating, and Event Bridge is for choreographing, right? And this is how Lego was able to pull out everything available as serverless in AWS, and they are actually running their business in AWS. So this was very, very interesting to me, understanding how these big players are really architecting things in AWS and then utilizing things that are coming in as it is. Like even which was introduced a year and a half back, and then they were able to immediately pull it in and then start using it. And then Lego was also presenting it in the last AWS ReInvent. With their at that time they were presenting about some kind of serverless patterns and stuff like that. But once Event Bridge is there, they picked it up and then they were able to use it, put it into use, and then they are presenting it here in this ReInvent, which was like the overall is a very good takeaway, I would say. So what do you guys think about it? Like using Lambdas across?
Yeah. Whenever you tell these concepts to anyone, right, especially those who are new to the cloud world, once you build all the concepts around EC2 and the nodes, how you can distribute across all the regions or within the availability zone, then suddenly this concept of serverless comes. Then it's like construct and deconstruct, remove it. Now you say that you don't need to bring up a EC2 instance to run the show. Now you have a serverless. That's like never ever thought kind of a process in the past. But look, Aurora also, right? For Aurora, they are saying now the serverless is available. So many new things. I think we can build a enterprise architecture can be only around serverless. Like Lego is a right example now. And I think initially I don't know if it's the same case, but KubeCon also claims saying that they use the entire thing as a serverless.
Lambda. Yeah, it's like
that's one of the startups that we can see. Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's like they completely ignored EC2. I mean, whoever starts with AWS, right? Like launching an EC2 instance is an ABCD in cloud.
Yeah.
I mean, you first start with launching an EC2 instance. You get to know what is the security group, and everything. And now with this serverless, they completely changed what is ABCD for AWS. So it's really a fascinating thing. And Lego, it's like in their dictionary, they don't want to use EC2. That's what I could understand from this architecture.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Thinking of a paradox here, right? I mean, just having container workloads on Lambda itself is another paradox to relate to this use case, definitely, right? So, and also another thing that pops up my mind is going from headless service to totally serverless, right? So that's also something that I can see.
Thank you,
So the
Naren, for
next
bringing
one,
Lego. Yeah.
yeah, the next thing is around the application integration patterns. It was presented by Dirk, and it was an amazing session. To be frank, I would really request everybody to go check the real session that he presented. The way he presented, he was funny, and he himself agreed his accent is also funny. But the way he presented, it's not something very new to everyone, right? But the way it is presented, and it's important for people who are picking up using message channels. And he told messaging, and I think it's a very valid point. Like if there is any huge organization or any huge distributed system or any huge architecture they have seen, if you have not seen a messaging component in that, it means it's a bug. So it's there everywhere. Without a messaging channel, then because that's the basis for your asynchronous communications, right? He starts with specifying two things that are very important: loose coupling, and then the asynchronous communication, right? Or you call it as divide and rule, right? Which is like microservices. Try to divide and then handle things in a small boxes. And the other one is loose coupling, which is supported by this messaging in asynchronous messaging specifically. So for that, actually, he started explaining about what is a queue, what is a topic, which is something that we all know, most of us. The queue is, as we know, is more like a sequential thing. And of course, every consumer will receive a message. Once a consumer consumes a message, then other consumers will not be able to consume the same message. Basically, queues puts that message and then it's used by the consumer. But the advantage is it's more used if you want to distribute a load. Like if you have hundreds of registrations coming in, if you want to process those registrations in parallel, then you can use queues and then you can have all these receivers. The advantage is you can easily scale the receivers. You just keep adding new ones and then the messages will get distributed. So he also compared this queue with similar to a buffered load balancer, right? So basically it actually balances the load, like flattens the curve of the peaks and then distributes this across to a small known chunks of processes, and then it also buffers the messages, right? These are the two things about SQS. The other side is the topic, right? So one queue is point to point, meaning a sender sends to a receiver. Even if you had multiple receivers, only one message will only reach one receiver, right? But in a topic, multiple receivers can subscribe to that. So it is like you are going and you are subscribing. I need this newsletter, then you are a receiver, right? And I am also subscribing to the same newsletter from AWS. I'll also receive the same set of emails, right? So it's typically that PubSub pattern. But the difference is every receiver will receive all the messages. So SNS has ensured that they will at least deliver one message to every receiver once. But they will not, as far as I know, they have not committed that they will not deliver more than once because they won't know exactly. But they will deliver at least once is what they are telling, is what they are confirming. So SNS helps in PubSub, right? And then our topics, and then SQS helps in queue. So there are two different things that we need to remember when it comes to messaging in AWS. And he does in asynchronous parts because you don't want to couple your two components in your architecture, having a point-to-point connection. The problem is then whenever there's a change in your component one, then automatically all the components that are different has to upgrade or adapt to that change. But rather put a messaging structure in between, right? Then you do not worry about the downtime on the other component. You do not worry about the upgrades in the other components and stuff like that. So messaging is very important, and making it asynchronous makes them even more loose coupling. And as these are like managed services, then you don't even worry about the infrastructure, the scaling of it, right? Just all triggered using APIs, which is amazing. And I think most of us are already using it, and if not, we'll be using it at some point of time. So he was also talking about a couple of patterns. So he mentioned application integration pattern for microservices, but basically it's a messaging pattern, right? It can be used not just for microservices, it can be used in any SOA architecture as well. He agreed. He mentioned it also in between. So one pattern he explained, which is very interesting, is the topic queue chaining, because we understand that there is one disadvantage in this SNS pattern, right? We cannot scale the subscribers. Because you cannot scale the subscribers to reduce the load, because the more and more you scale the subscribers, it will just repeat the same number of messages to all the subscribers. So it's not actually reducing the load on SNS or your publisher, right? The queue is not getting completed faster when you increase subscribers. Probably it will go slower because it has to actually ensure the message is passed to every receiver that is there. So it's going to give a negative effect of by increasing the subscribers unless there's a need. Then how can solve it? Because there are scenarios where we want to do this, because in a system these are like more like events, right? In a system you'll build a component and then there will be lots of other components in your architecture that are interested in those messages. So all those will become the subscribers. But how will you reduce the load on that is happening? Like how you can really scale up this pattern is it's a combination of it. They call it as topic queue chaining, right? So basically you put the topic and then on the receiver end, don't just connect the receiver directly, rather parse this for every receiver, create a queue, and then that for that receiver, that queue buffers and then make sure, and then within that queue, you can actually scale up your receivers, right? So basically queue buffers everything that's coming from the topic, and for that receiver, you can keep add multiple receiver instances and you can reduce the load that is happening in a single receiver. So there is one of the interesting patterns that he explained, this is called topic queue chaining. All these are actually also part of the enterprise integration patterns, a book that was published long ago about integrations. I used to even refer in my solutions years back. But these are very interesting to see it fresh from an AWS point of view using their provider services. So basically it fans out and then scales out, right? The next another pattern he talked about is message routing, right? So it's more like a message filters, right? Not all the subscribers will be interested in receiving all the messages, right? Because there could be a reason why you would say, I don't want all the letters, probably I'm interested in new products, that I would say I just needed, details about any changes in your services or status of my application or account. I'm not interested in any of your product newsletters. So basically you are trying to filter your subscriptions, right? So that's another pattern where you want to subscribe, and this is independent of the publisher. Publisher is going to send everything to the topic. And then based on the subscriber, there will be agreement between the subscriber and the topic to filter these messages, what they want. That way you need not process all the messages. Otherwise, again, the result will be overloaded. Probably I've seen this in my in my past organizations where we used to build, and then we will be receiving all the events from all the applications because we are subscribed to a particular TIPCO queue or topic, and then we will have to actually on the receiver send, we need to loop it and then figure out what is the message that we are interested in, because it will be like all the events will be pushing towards suddenly, and then there will be so many events from so many components. We need to really loop through, look at the headers of the messages, and then find out what is the right message for me, which is very complicated, and it's not something that should be done by the subscriber or the receiver, because he should be easily able to filter out by just specifying in some specification. These are handled in different ways technically. They will actually specify it as the metadata when they subscribe, and then that metadata can be used to filter it. But again, those are details. But these are like two important patterns that he explained, and you should really see it. He also explained it with one example. He called it the Wild Riders. Wild Riders is an imaginary company which is like it's like Ola or Uber, which is actually a passenger service, but actually it's not based on a cab, it's based on unicorns. And then what if this unicorn based company is going to have and technology behind it to operate? If they have an app, how they'll use this messaging to decouple it and things like amazing use case, imaginary use case, fantasy linked. You should see it to understand this with the example, but basically he explained these two patterns in those examples. And then I was looking around it, and it seems there is a GitHub repo, which I'll link below in this slide, that actually AWS Serverless workshops, where they are actually using that a lot, that wildrides.com as an imaginary organization. And then based on that, they have built the whole architecture, solution patterns, and then things that can help. So the takeaways, right? Important for any architecture is divide and conquer, which in other words, for now we can say it's microservices. Of course, there are multiple ways to do it. The other one is loose coupling, which is mostly used using asynchronous messages, right? And again, he also talked about some details about how we can handle asynchronous messages. There are two problems with asynchronous messages, right? The one problem is once you send a message, now receiver will receive it. Now, how receiver will be able to know to which request I'm responding back after some time, right? So there should be some way to revert. So there is something called a callback URL where you can use, like you can specify this part of this request, and then they can use that one to identify and repatch it and send it back. And also for the sender or the publisher, when they receive the response again, how they will be sure that this is the response they received for the request that I sent, right? Then the solution for that is the correlation IDs, right? So you can use the correlation ID in your message, and you can request every responder to use the same correlation ID when they call back the URL. That way, you know it's part of this request, and then you can correlate it together and then put it together in a way that you can use it further in your architecture. So these are the shortened version of what he presented, but that itself is, I know, sounds very big, but I would say watch it. So basically, end of day, loose coupling is better than the lousy coupling. Lousy coupling is nothing but the tight coupling, he says, right? When you have point-to-point communication, so he says loose coupling is better than lousy coupling is the summary, right? You will enjoy it more when you see the original one, the way he presented. I would suggest, I will really suggest that. Yeah.
Even talking about this, Naren, I mean, like the concept of having producers, consumers, and a queue itself is like a paradox to a lot of infra guys, right? I mean, how do I deal with this? Somebody having a message queue, message per system on top of a physical machine or a virtual machine, moving it to queue, moving it to something like a Kubernetes, right? And then being it stateless, stateful, all that decisions, Amazon has taken it out and say that here is our queue management systems that's there as a service for you, and you can do a lot of loose or a lousy coupling, as you said, right?
Yeah. One thing to add is that in the microservices world, it's always like, though there is no dependency, in some cases, people still argue about the dependencies in the world. I think divide and conquer looks to be the to-go kind of a solution when people are looking at the microservices. I think we should encourage people to do that more and more, and then that sounds like an interesting eye catcher.
This brings to me to an example of like Rafiq, when we write microservices, let's say that we are writing a service to stop a VM and start a VM without even having a create. How can it be divide and conquer is a question I usually get it, right? But then we have to look at this independently, right? So it's the way we look at divide and conquer. Yeah,
create is a different service, and there should be another service for that. So
right,
okay. The last one that I want to cover around the serverless itself, I want to be quick because we are already 1 hour from the session now, but I think I'll try to be quick because these are really interesting, out of the world concepts for me. I know there are people who are working in analytics and data sciences for years now, and they will be already heard about it, but for me it was new, it was interesting. I won't get into details, but again, this session was by Danilo, an AWS speaker himself, and then he was explaining about how Lambda can be used for data sciences and analyzing the huge data, right? Or even training your models, if you're talking about machine learning, using AWS Lambda, right? So he talked about these two methods or patterns. So one is the Monte Carlo method, which is like if you are trying to find area of that cloud. If somebody is asking you what is the area of that cloud, which is not it's not a geometrical figure, which I don't think there's an easy formula available to really calculate the area of that, right? It can only be an approximation. Now, how accurate can be that approximation is the question, right? How can you do that? One way to do that is put a square around it, right? Or a rectangle around it that covers as much as possible of that cloud, and then say more or less this area, right? Now, how less could be another question of how close you can be. So this Monte Carlo method is nothing but just create a random points, put your rectangle around the this particular whatever figure. It can be this cloud, or it can be anything that's that you want to do, and then randomly start putting in points across it, and then say whether it's a hit or a miss, right? Your random points, but distributed in the equal space. If it's a hit or a miss, right? And then number of hits versus miss, that ratio if you take, and if you try to calculate the same ratio between your square or rectangle's area, and then use a similar ratio, then probably you're closer to the area of the cloud than a random guess, right? So it's more a mathematical way of doing it, but it's all based on randomness. And again, all these is based on how accurate and how long you are doing this calculation, right? It's like more like a rendering, an animation. The rendering is more and more accurate or more and more clear when you render it for a longer time, like ray trace rendering and all. You can stop the rendering in between, but then your resolution will be little low, but still the video will be available. But the more you render, more it will be reprocessing again and again. So it's similar to that. Keep learning, keep hitting, losing. The longer you do, accurate your area will be, and then you have to make a decision when you have to stop this process, right? That's about the machine learning anyway. So you keep training your model. You have to stop at a point. Of course, the more you train, the model will be better. The more you train, it will learn more. But you can't keep learning and you can't keep training. At one point of time, it should start doing its work. The reason why it's built for, and then you have to trade off between the accuracy versus the duration of training it, right? So that is I don't want to get into details. The second one is about ensemble forecasting. Again, an interesting one. This is about, for example, there are multiple parameters that decides whether it's going to rain here or not, right? And there will be lots of input that will be determined to make a decision. And most of them are like not very accurate, and they can be in ranges because there are several factors that impacts how you can decide each of the parameters. For example, the wind speed. Again, there will be several reasons why two different measuring devices will give a different value. You can never be accurate about it. Then how can it be as close as possible to your to identifying what the chance of rain, right? Here again, he talks about run random parallel lambda functions with the lot variations of the inputs, and then each one of them let them give independently their outputs, right? Once they give independent of their outputs, then you combine together and you take a percentage of it, how many hits and how many misses, like how many says there's a possibility to rain, how many says there is no possibility to rain, and then based on that you can decide a closer approximation. For example, 56 out of your 100 it says the rain will be there, then you can believe that probably it's going to rain. There's a chance of 56% of rain. So maybe that's the reason why we are seeing in Google and there's a 20% of rain. I always wonder how they say 20% of possibility of raining. I understand now.
We need to check with our Chennai weatherman also.
Tamil Nadu weatherman, yep.
Yeah, Tamil Nadu weatherman. Has the mental model running in his head, I think.
Yeah.
Lambdas in the brain.
We should convert to lambdas.
One last thing he added is AWS Lambda has now started supporting Amazon EFS. One problem is AWS Lambda in the past is that you need to zip everything, all the code that you want into a single zip. People who are using Lambda will know that pain. Then you deploy it and that zip is getting executed. Now, if you want more number of modules for your application, right? The bigger the zip is, and then sometimes there's a limit up to how much how huge this can be. So basically, what now it does is you'll be able to attach an EFS endpoint or file system to your Lambda function, right? So that way, if for example, if you have specifically data sciences related modules in a particular folder, this you can use an EC2 instance, connect your EFS, download all the modules that you want in that folder, and then connect this EFS file system to Lambda, and then Lambda will be use those modules on the fly. So you do not put everything in your zip code along with your source code and then publish to Lambda, but you can use EFS as an attached file system, like a dynamic file system for Lambda, and then you can use that information, which is very powerful and which was very interesting. So I wanted to specifically mention about that.
One thing I wanted to talk about this, Naren, sorry for stopping you. That's very interesting topic. At the same time, in the Lambda, we all saw the pain of memory, right? When you invoke a Lambda, it was at 2 GB. Now they moved it to 10 GB. That's going to give a big relief for the heavy Lambda functions, but people have to be careful about the pricing. It doesn't come free. So yeah, that's right. Another very good improvement, because we were having some issues with the Lambda limitations and all with the memory. So yeah, definitely something to watch.
I'm already thinking about persistent storage running on a container which is on Lambda rates already. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. how the volumes will be still attached to the question.
Yep.
Okay, anything else that we want to discuss about serverless, or can we pitch into the interesting topic of containers?
Just wanted to cover this bit for the coders, Naren, and this is like about
Go ahead.
the CodeGuru. The CodeGuru that Amazon has. It's not definitely new announcement in this reInvent. CodeGuru has a reviewer and a profiler to start with, and this reviewer and profiler reviewer is something that checks about code quality, catch code problems before they go into production, fix vulnerabilities, kind of a thing. And then code profiler is something that after you deploy the code, what happens to my CPU, to my memory, etc. Right? This is a short of what CodeGuru is. I know open source world and then CodeGuru talking about will remain SonarQube for a lot of people. But then the good news for the coders is till now the CodeGuru was supporting Java. Now 3.6 version of Python till 3.9 version of Python. CodeGuru is supporting. So good news for the Python programmers there.
Yeah, that reminds one more thing. The guru looks like a good word being picked up by AWS. He added CodeGuru last time. This time a new service been introduced as a DevOps Guru. Yeah, that's a new service. As many of you, definitely something we need to try as people working on AWS. This is like they learned a lot from the Amazon.com. That learning they converted as something people can use it out of the box. We don't need to have a lot of ML kind of skills to analyze it. So if you have an account, you can run your DevOps Guru. That's going to look at one of the pillars of the well-architected AWS, right? The operations excellency. They are playing a very good role with the DevOps Gurus. And you can go create this service and analyze your account based on the resources you want to analyze. They will come with the ML data, which they already have it for Amazon.com for ages. That they are going to tell us that the predictability, if there is any error rating issue or any other issue happening, they are going to not only detect it, but also going to give a recommendation. This is something going to be very good, because nobody wants a downtime, right? This is like predicting a downtime even before something can happen. This is definitely one service I feel is going to change the dynamics of the operations world, because we tried to get similar kind of information from different metrics altogether. Now, with the click of a button, you can get this. It's still in the preview mode, because when I was looking at the services, I didn't still find it in the services. But if you go with the link given by AWS in the documentation, I think we can still navigate to that. That looks like another good one.
Yep,
actually, when you mentioned the DevOps Guru, right? So I found some of the like memes or something like whether AWS they themselves have used AWS DevOps Guru to predict the last week's outage. I mean, they had this Kinesis outage, right? So it was like whether they were using it, like to predict if Kinesis is going to go down or something. So yeah, it was like like ringing back their words only.
Yeah, just that they predicted it, but then didn't act on it. Yep, definitely yes. Yes, there's a meme again.
Recommendation engine did not suggest what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Or someone who is monitoring it didn't take it to the higher notice or something. Okay, now let's switch to containers. I guess it's the most favorite part, or like favorite subject for all of us here. I mean, we have, at least from AWS perspective, we have ECS, EKS, Fargate, and everything. So I attended some, good sessions on ECS. I mean, I was always looking at the microservices architecture and everything. And I found this session where they were suggesting, like the best practices for ECS. And I just pointed few, maybe there are even more, but, I just wanted to thought of highlighting the main one. The often mistakes that we do, no, I would not say mistakes, but, even we knowingly do is like we pass the secrets as an environment variables. I mean, so that there was high stress from AWS best practices to avoid using secrets in environment variables. Instead, we can put it in AWS Secrets Manager or something, and then we can call that ARN and then fetch the secrets, whatever that is stored in Secrets Manager. And obviously, IAM roles. We know that task, it's nothing but an easily smallest deployable unit on ECS, and task needs certain kind of roles to perform an actions. Like if it is an application, then it needs to contact DB, and if it is exporting any logs, it should have permissions to throw to CloudWatch or anything. And we have EC2 level based IAM roles. So that is nothing but like on whichever the EC2 instance the task is hosted. So that EC2 instance, it will have its own IAM roles attached to it, and it may have an permission to access some other thing like S3 or VPC flow logs or something. So they were stressing on this point, like we need to segregate what is the task level IAM. I mean, what are the permissions that it requires to complete its role, and we should isolate it from EC2 level IAM rules. I mean, what are like I said, an EC2 instance can run multiple containers. So one container may need a particular set of permissions to contact S3. One container may need to contact DynamoDB. One container to contact RDS or anything. So it's like they were stressing out this point of isolating this task level or EC2 level roles and anything. And one thing that I would like to speak here is about the task execution role. I mean, people often get confused with the task level IAM role and task execution role. So task execution role is nothing but what that ECS require in order to execute that task. Like it needs to pull the image from ECR, and it has to build up a container. And then once the container is built, then it has to forward those logs, to CloudWatch or anything. So that is where the task execution role stands. Task level IAM roles, like I said earlier, it's just to, execute that particular task, whichever that is running in that container. So that is the.
So basically, for the functionality, one is for the functionality that you want to execute in your. Task. The other one is about the infrastructure part itself.
Yeah,
for things to really run.
Yeah, and we can see, like always, they recommend to enable that scan on push settings on ECR, so that whatever the image that is being built and pushed to ECR, it gets scanned immediately for any vulnerabilities. And obviously, regular audit of API calls using CloudTrail, I guess, which we most commonly use CloudTrail to see what are all the best practices that we could see. So those are few of the best practices that were concerned to ECS is concerned. I guess you can add, from Kubernetes perspective as well, if there are any best practices for container images or containers itself and everything.
Looks like they made the ECS registry public or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyone heard of it?
Yeah, it's like a Docker hub from Amazon.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have entry-level images also, and they give it that verified label, just like Docker gives, so that those are the very trustable ones. Exactly. Yeah.
And the amount of data also they are planning to provide looks to be like huge, like 50 GB or terabytes of data they are talking about. Yeah, images.
Without AWS account itself, they were giving some in gigabytes without an AWS account. Yeah.
That's very good point. Yes.
Yeah. So
my takeaway from containers and Kubernetes is the same thing that I talked about EKS distro and EKS Anywhere, right? I mean, still that some organizations that are looking for hybridization or move on to the cloud, can I have a preview of EKS running in my prem, and can it be managed through an Amazon console? All this ties together. That's the takeaway on the container.
So is it like, can those clusters also have some of the workers running on cloud, or it's how it is?
No, they haven't promised that. As far as I know, it's not totally a hybrid model. But then having a EKS cluster on-prem connected to Amazon account, maybe through a simple notification service, telling you about when to upgrade, what are your vulnerabilities, and then also having a mechanism to push those vulnerabilities, the fixes for those vulnerabilities and upgrades, etc. It makes the life of a Kubernetes admin much more easier.
Okay.
Yeah, they were giving 3 connected models to EKS Anywhere, about fully connected, partially connected, as well as disconnected. Disconnected is like you run your instance, we give you a distribution here, and then some point later you can plug into it. Partially connected is whenever we have a schedule, we can go update. A lot of organizations still go with a scheduled way of change management, and then in the cloud native world, connected anywhere, right? Just go monitor my cluster, get the statistics out of it, tell me what is happening, what is vulnerable, etc. That's the totally connected model.
Yeah, awesome. We still have lots of things to cover, so let's touch upon the key points so that it's interesting and crisp. I still see lots of slides.
Yeah, definitely. So the next 2 slides, it's more or less like similar, the CoPilot CLI, and next you can find Proton. Like I said, AWS are, very what you could say, like very committed to bringing that infrastructure automation so that developers, they can do everything in just a single click of that. I mean, I don't know how good that will be in production side, because always we know, like we production, we take care of everything one by one. But at least this can be used for lower environments like dev or testing or anything. So you can say it's just like a Terraform in it. So you have to just give it Copilot in it, and it automatically has this template from which it creates all this infrastructure required from the microservice. And Copilot CLI, I would like to register, it's an extensively built tool for ECS, EKS, and Fargate. It's only an out and out exclusively for containers. So it's just with a single command of CLI, you can get your environment up and running, and you can perform all your tasks there. So that's the same way in Proton. If you move to the next slide, in Proton, it's more or less like it gives a GUI for us, like what we can going to deploy, and how it is we can deploy it in different environments, like lower environments and production. If you slip to next slide, you can see how it works actually, the Proton. Here you can see that there is an environment template where the platform teams create, and from that environment is created, and there is a service template. Here is where the actual microservice sits in, and this microservice is made into a container image, and it's deployed. And finally what we get is an end URL where it can be used for end users. So these are the key takeaways as far as infrastructure provisioning is concerned for the containers.
Awesome.
Looks like definitely going to help for the people who are juggling with a lot of lambdas and all that work.
Yeah, definitely. And last but not the least, just we are speaking about Lambda. Again, we have another serverless concept here in containers, that is Fargate. So we know Fargate, it's serverless for containers, and we know how beneficial it has been for many people. I mean, the practical use case that I could think of is like in our application, we run Jenkins in ECS, and all our slave machines runs on Fargate, so that only when the build occurs, we just a container gets spun up, and that Fargate container is takes care of that particular build, and once the build is complete, it exits. So now in going advanced in the cost optimization or anything for Fargate, now we have this Fargate Spot, where they claim we can reduce the unused capacity, and we can save the cost up to 70% less. That's a huge amount considering the standard Fargate. And we also definitely get a 2 minutes warning, like when you are going to lose your Spot instance. It's like easy to spot, but again for container Spot. So that is really a good thing that they are focusing so that it should be a customer driven. Exactly.
This looks like a oxymoron to me: containers and then consumption, and then Spot on top of it. These three things all look oxymoron to me, definitely. But then there must be some patterns that AWS has looked at, saying that there is a necessity for a Spot kind of Fargate on containers. That is the need of an hour for a lot of an organization. It either means that there is a lot of huge containers running in some part of the world. We still exist in the microservices world, right? So yeah.
No, it's also like the Fargate is more like a managed service, right?
Yep.
And then the cost optimization can only come if they can use this kind of scalability within that, and then removing unused resources. Without that, people might always compare the cost, and they'll say, I don't have control. So it's always a control over cost decision, right? It's okay if I'm not having control, but it's reducing my cost and effort. It's okay, is what some people will say. But if you're not going to have a cost benefit, and if you're not also going to have control over what you're doing, then probably people might switch over to EC2 instances, or running managed nodes, or some other alternatives. I think that could be one driver for this change.
Makes
sense. The adoption rate definitely makes change. Now, people who initially wanted to host it or something, the cost point of view will give a very good mileage for people who's taking decision whether to go with the Fargate or not. So Spot is definitely a big win.
Yeah. And speaking of serverless, like we know, all the containers are ephemeral. I mean, once the task is done, we are bound to lose the containers. And the big question arises, how do we want to, perform any root cause analysis, or, like if you want to see what went wrong with the container or anything. So that's where logging helps, right? So we constantly log everything, and we export it to CloudWatch, and from there to S3 bucket or anything. So logging for ECS was available for Fargate. Now in this reinvent, they have introduced for logging for EKS on Fargate as well. So as you can see, Fluent Bit, it's just a log forwarder container which is running, which just collects the logs from the running containers, and then it forwards it to, you can see, CloudWatch, S3 or Elasticsearch. The grayed out part, that is for Datadog and Splunk, the support is not officially out yet, but AWS has confirmed that it will be in support early 2021. So I guess this solves the another logging issue for Fargate, at least for EKS perspective.
I think this is one of the slides where I'm sorry, it's the art of the day. I'm finding a lot of oxymorons here. A partner cloud in an AWS slide. That's definitely something that we want to look at.
Yeah.
These are SaaS products, and probably Datadog is also running in AWS. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
It's a valid point. Actually, there is a suite of, by looking at here, right, below there is a Firelens container, Fluent Bit, right? And this Fluent Bit, Fluent D, they have actually, AWS also provides an upstream, refined, should I say refined or tuned version of these open source products specifically for Kubernetes, not specifically for AWS, sorry. And they have a separate repo for that. So they are actually, so if you look at AWS open source in GitHub, you'll be finding all those open source products that they are actually, like Grafana and everything, they are actually trying to tune it to support AWS, meaning well suited for AWS, and they are having a suite of tools, which is a very good thing, because for everything else, we can start using open source that can reduce the overall cost. And if it's supported by a provider like AWS, then probably because mostly it is that, right? All these tools may not be able to get tuned to all the providers that are available. They'll try to make it as generic as possible, and when these providers get down and then they support these tools, then probably we'll have much more support and managed version of it. We'll be able to use that one instead of the open source one that is available, and then we might have to add some add-ons and things to really support or do some customizations, which is something that everybody should look for. Just go to GitHub and look for AWS open source, and you will find set of things that are doing. There's also a blog that AWS has written over it.
Yeah, definitely. And if you move to the next slide, I guess that would be the last slide for container, maybe. Yeah. So these are the, we know AWS, they keep, updating, launching new features for their services. And this is the list of things that they have, rolled out to Fargate. And the one thing that caught my eyes was they are considering to replace Docker runtime with containerd. I mean,
Yep.
whenever we say containers, the first thing that we get in mind is Docker and Docker runtime. And now AWS are considering containerd, which is this is really a huge one, if you ask me.
Is it due to this Docker runtime being discarded by its Kubernetes?
I think it's all related. Kubernetes has,
yeah.
But actually they also read that Docker is going to take over maintaining the Docker shim. So Docker shim is more like an, for simplicity, we can say it's more like an adapter to the CRI interface inside Kubernetes, right? Which is for supporting the container runtimes. And this Docker shim is more like an adapter to support Docker, because Docker is not just the runtime. Docker is an application by itself. It has a huge registry, it has its own GUI, it has its own CLI and stuff like that. So Kubernetes was maintaining Docker shim so far to make Docker runtime Docker runtime to be supported by Kubernetes. But now they have mentioned that they will not be supporting it anymore. But I read a recent article that Docker is going to take over that Docker shim maintenance. So probably it's going to be there for some more time. But yeah, I think just that news might make lots of people move towards containerd. And containerd is again anyway basic runtime under Docker, so it's no different. Just that the whole Docker will not be there, but every runtime, again, if somebody is really panicking about it, if that is going to get replaced, it's not going to make any difference for the users. Every container runtime will have the same specifications, so it will be able to push registries, images, and everything. So there is no change anybody for end users, but it's only that the runtime that is installed in those worker nodes, if you're not using managed nodes, or if you're not using Fargate, you might have to install it yourself, these runtimes. And I think only one thing I read is about Docker and Docker pattern. If you're using like Docker socks, then probably you should look out to have for a replacement, because not all runtimes have that concept, but which is also not very personally I don't see it's a very popularly used concept, but yeah, there are places where people are using it. So anything else here, or we go next? Okay, this is just, EKS was there for years now, and then they have just made it even more interesting, because just by create cluster, it will create the whole infrastructure for you, the whole EKS cluster, right? If you're using managed nodes, all you have to give as a configuration file, and then it will also create all the worker nodes for you, pre-installed with the AMI, everything, even the CNIs, everything that is needed for your whole Kubernetes cluster to run. And then it's also GitOps enabled, meaning you need not worry about applying your YAML files manually. Now they are actually enabling using eksctl. You'll be able to synchronize your GitHub repo or any Git-based repos directly, like any other GitOps concept. So you can directly make your Git repository as the source of truth, and you will be able to synchronize it to EKS clusters. That way, your application is always in sync with your source code, right? That's just a small note that I wanted to mention about eksctl. Sorry, Rajesh, that was not, yeah. Go ahead.
Talk about eksctl. When this remembers, this gets me to the good old days of taking a VM, installing etcd on a machine, and then also setting up replica sets, replication controller, and whatnot in Kubernetes, right? Just think of spinning up a complete cluster using eksctl, where it provisions a lot of infrastructure resources at the back end, that too on a remote AWS availability zone, right? I mean, it's mind-boggling for the people who have seen the evolution of Kubernetes come through.
Yeah, very valid. So there is only one thing that I want to cover. Of course, as I told, there's a huge number of sessions, and we can keep talking about these things forever. Even when we are covering only for the first week. But I just want to cover only one more that's related to containers. Sorry, Rajesh, you thought it's over 2 slides back, but we still have one more. And then I will hand it over to Ravi. I know he's silent, but once he starts talking about network firewall and IAM access analyzer, I think we'll have to keep mum for some time. That's going to be more related to networking, which I am not the expert, but I expect to hear lots of news. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about was about the Verizon's journey, right? Which is very interesting as well. So people who are trying to move from a monolith to a microservice architecture, and if they want to move to cloud at the same time, or even if they are running in cloud but they are running a monolith, they want to move towards microservice, then this is a very good example of how a journey will normally be. I think this is, I won't say it's very different. It's a very typical one I've seen in other organizations as well, the way they do it. But one thing that strikes me is that when they were doing this migration, the whole migration they actually did using Canary, right? So basically they were moving a piece of their architecture, a piece by piece functionalities into a microservice, and this small microservice was running in the new stack, right? With the microservices talking to the monolith, and then they actually diverted. It's like a web-based Canary, so they diverted the few percentage of their traffic towards this new stack using microservices, even if it's partly, so that they were actually learning from the real traffic whether their microservice architecture is working, and then of course they have control over redirecting back to the main monolith-based stack, which was very interesting way of doing migration, because we know there is a pattern of strangler pattern where you can take the piece into cloud and then move it. But there is a very good question how you are going to test that piece. So are you going to really replace it, or you are going to run it parallelly with the one that is already running in on-prem? Then I found this very interesting the way they did it, which is, I think, again, it's not very different concept, but it was interesting to see. I just quickly summarize what they did, but I would suggest you to go over their video as well. All these videos, I think mostly they're video on demand. You'll be able to go even now. Log in and then check these videos. We have provided the links at the end. I will share the slides probably in the comments as well. The summary of challenges that they faced is the upskilling the team. Of course, they are moving to microservices, which is now suddenly containers, Kubernetes, EKS, eksctl, managed nodes, the different way of logging, monitoring, everything comes in. And then they have to upskill the team. They told it's a very big challenge, and then they were suggesting everybody should start with upskilling the team even before starting the migration to make it even more smooth. The second one is about optimizing the application for containers, right? We also discussed in our previous videos in our channel about the production disruption handling, where we talked about what is the 12 factors about container which you have to follow as a standard, so that these are like key factors that you can follow. That way you can make sure the application is really container. So it's not that you just take a small chunk, write a small program and put it inside a container. So that's not the right way of doing it. So there are some standards to follow. That way it will be easier. It's not that you cannot do it. The more you follow the standard, it will be easier for you to really manage that container, because containers comes with its own complexities, right? The third one is about automatically building and deploying. Of course, you should have an automation in build and deployment, which is a no-brainer. If you are going to use microservices, never even dream of deploying it manually. Because it's going to soon grow into thousands of containers, right? Of course, they specifically tuned cluster, node, and pod DNS to suit their needs. And of course, these configurations are not. It all depends on the organization, how their DNS setup is, right? And what kind of nodes and what kind of workloads they are running. It all depends on that. So, but still, it's a thing to remember. Finally, not to forget about the monitoring and logging, which is very key. With so many microservices or so many containers running around, you should have some easy way to monitor and log, and then to find a correlation between all those calls that are happening, which is very important. If you're already running microservices, or containers, what I'm talking about. If not, I think it's better to know about it before we even start the journey around containers. That's again a very interesting topic from Verizon. So they were about their journey. Verizon is a huge organization, so they moving towards containers and EKS is something that everybody should look through, because I know lots of legacy organizations in different domains is looking for it. So I think it's a very good talk around it.
Yeah.
So I think that summarizes.
Good way of keeping the 1 minute. I think the Verizon's one good point we can learn from this is that the people who's moving to cloud journey, right? They normally try to do the lift and shift model. Once they go there, they'll start feeling no, nothing has changed. Things are still going wrong, and what can go wrong in DC can also sometimes go wrong if you just do a lift and shift model. I think this Canary way is definitely much more also. Canary model looks to be the better option. I think if people can start looking some kind of an option, keep your DC up and running and get into cloud with a Canary model with this Kubernetes kind of a world, that definitely gives a very good mileage, and they can start taking the advantage of cloud from the day one, and they can use the elasticity when needed, right? I think that would be a good win for people who are looking at the cloud journey. Yeah, very good way of they kept. I think upskilling the team comes first. That should be the priority. Yeah.
Shiva, you want to add something around the EKS, or we can move towards the next slide from Ravi?
Can move towards the next slide, definitely.
Just give me a second. Yeah. Okay. We don't have a specific slide on that, but anyway, Ravi, I would let you talk around the things about network and security that came in, which is going to be interesting for me at least.
Yeah, thank you, Naren. Thank you for the whole session here. I didn't go through these much videos in last 2 days, but at least we had some key takeaways. Like at least, these kind of vendors are there. We can go and explore within AWS ReInvent. There is a chance we can get a summarized way to understand what last 3 days has happened. So without any delay, I'll start with the networking and security, the identity and access management. So we got the network firewall, AWS network firewall. So far we have AWS WAF and then the Shield. Then they come up with firewall manager. Now they come up with AWS network firewall. So the case is gone now. No need to get some product, security product in particular. People can explore about the network firewalls. They can restrict the IPs and they can write the security policies around it, and they can enable it at the organization level. So there is some restrictions, like for example, whenever AWS is going to release any new services, they want the customer to upgrade themselves. So without upgrading, they can't get the new fruit. So they have to upgrade themselves so that they can use the newest feature. So likewise, firewall manager is going to help in that way. Like we need to upgrade it to transit gateway to have it efficiently. So that's where they're updating the services. So AWS Transit Gateway need to be there, and Resource Access Manager has to be there. These are all the prerequisites for the AWS Network Firewall. So at the AWS Network Firewall, already it is in the console. You can view it on the VPC. So you can you can view your security rules, security groups, and you can apply the rules for specific to VPC. So you can deploy different models together. So various deployment models are available for the firewalls. So you can have it in a centralized deployment model, and then you can split across your VPC. So in that way, different deployment modes are supported. And so far, like east-west traffic insertion is always a pain point. Like we know, like we are passing the traffic via one firewall endpoint, and we can see whatever the things are happening through the firewall. Now, what is happening within my VPC? For example, VPC A to B is communicating themselves, but I just want to know from the security audit point of view what exactly is happening. So you can inspect using the network firewall. So that is some key things they have introduced, and you can also have it in the AWS organization level, so you can control it one point as well. So this is one thing they brought with the AWS network firewall deployment, and
so this network firewall does this have any filter like like AWS WAF to block certain IPs?
Yeah, they are going to bundle with the existing services like AWS Shield, WAF, and then other things. So you can write the policies in such a way like, I just want to block these IPs, or I just want to allow this particular IP alone. I don't want to allow other IPs. In that way, you can write your firewall rules and apply it, and you can create the policies around it, and you can segregate you can follow the multi-account strategy. So have your accounts in such a way manageable across different teams and different organizations, so that you can write your security control policies at the organization level. That will help while you're deploying the network firewall as well. So it will be easy to apply at various levels. And you can deploy this firewall at the VPC or at the ASD level also. So it's going to act as a firewall endpoint basically. You can have a rule within your route table itself. So you can direct your traffic to the firewall endpoint, and there you can do your inspection and then forward it. I think it's very soon. Like, we need to explore much. So I'll have some time and explore it, and I'll come up with more information around this AWS network firewall. So once we get explore, we'll come to know about this.
The way I understood WAF is more like it actually connects to the ALB, right? It won't sit in between the when you put it in architecture, it won't sit actually in between, but it will read the traffic from ALB and make sure that there are some filters. But I think this one is going to really sit in the architecture when I put the diagram, right, in between two components.
Yes, exactly. So AWS WAF is again in the transparent mode. It is sitting in the before the ALBs. And this one is going to sit within your VPC itself, and it will act as an endpoint as well. So that is one good thing we can have through the inspection.
And having it at an organization level and having common policies is going to be, I think, an important one. We might have to have discussions with our network specialists within our organizations around this.
Yeah. Yes. Even if you look at the videos posted by the AWS heroes, they have posted some videos around the how we can do the best practices around the identity and security, auditing, everything. So everything they are reminding the point again and again, like MFA has to be enabled. You should not configure a mobile for an MFA. You can go for YubiKey or something. So if in case the battery is down, you don't need to worry. You can make use of the YubiKey. So like that, various factors they are bringing in, and no need to worry about the cloud trial logs which are older than 90 days. You need to push it through your storage. Don't get panic at the end. Like, you should have some best practices already implemented. So security and network is one thing which is always should be upgraded. So without upgrading, we should not get the better futures around the AWS services. So if you are using the more recent services, then you need to upgrade your network and security. And always you should take care of the security. Like even one of the managers posted the IAM access analyzer. So let me start with the IAM access analyzer. Since I brought this point, identity access management is a continuous process. So the one slide which really interesting is access control journey. So whenever we are discussing among the leadership level, so they will discuss about the journey, overall journey. So whether we are going to innovate something or not, what is the innovation has been happened in last 6 months. So there again, the security leadership will say, no, it's okay. Innovate is definitely a needed thing, but parallelly we need to prevent the dangerous actions which is going to come around the innovation. So the security process has to be parallelly travel across all the teams. So it's not a separate team who works. Now it's each and every individual's work to do. Like they're necessary. They have to implement the security at all their levels. And then the security portion, like how fast we are moving in the deployments. Yeah, definitely we need to move fast, but we need to understand the security posture as well. So do I have the right security controls if I miss anything? If I drift away from the actual goal, do I have any better security posture to understand the security gaps? So in that way, we need to understand that. And while we are talking about the innovation, people will think like we need the most privileges. I don't want any what do you say, like a precise security policies. I just need open access to this service. I wanted to explore it. No, that's not the case. So always you should achieve the least privilege. If you're going to read some particular security file from the security S3 storage, then you need to have the read access alone. No need to give S3 star. So it is again going to impact our whole the goal. So the when and where we need to precise the security controls and we need to enable the least privileged one. And also they are saying like attribute attribute based access control. So compare with your role and compare the policies and what are the resource you're going to access. Just understand this and then refine your policies and refine your IAM permissions. So the IAM access analyzer is the one menu they have introduced under IAM. You can see it. So with that, we can see whether wider permission is being given to this resource. Is there wider permission given to the network? For example, already AWS network role has been defined under the IAM. So whether the network IAM role requires EC2 permission or not. So this is something we need to check. Already he's been assigned with the AWS network and role, but he's having other services roles. So we need to fine tune that. And also the IAM access analyzer, one more thing which is giving is like this particular resource has been accessed last 10 days before or last 110 days before. So we can understand those logs and we can fine tune our S3 IAM permissions, and we can fine tune our IAM roles and policies. Depends on that. So with that thing, I just want to give. Is there any other questions we can discuss?
One thing that's interesting is, security should be always there starting from one. This is something that I'm hearing for more than a decade now. Even in my old organization, we used to have a separate security team. Then we started discussing around, putting product requirements, meaning there are two parts to it, right? One is you look at the functionalities that you have, and then you say, okay, for this functionality, I might have to build some kind of non-functional requirements or security requirements. And there will be some additional security requirements that are outside functionality, but just needed to prevent your overall architecture or overall infrastructure or overall data or whatever it is, right? There are two parts to it, and all these parts should be part of your backlog itself when you start the development, right? Starting from there,
Yeah.
and then your backlog is prioritized accordingly. So you can't leave. I know there are places where we build everything, the whole functionality. When we are about to go to production, then the security will say stop, and then they'll say, oh, these are missing. And then there'll be an argument going on. Okay, this is not going to happen this quarter, and then probably we should have to put it in the production, and then we'll come back to this and develop it in the next quarter. Then it basically means for a quarter you are vulnerable, right? So I think it's important that the whole requirement, starting from the requirement phase, it should be gathered along. It should be part of your stories. When you take a functionality, all the related security things should be taken along and then delivered, and then it should be part of your definition of done if you're using Sprint or Scrum. And then, of course, it should be part of your testing. You can have static code analysis. You can have security scanning in your code. Then it can be part of your build where you can run your container scanning or image scanning or whatever it is. It should be part of your push where you can again scan it when you are pushing it into the registry and then tag it if you want. And then it should be part of your deployment. You should ensure that it's all secure. This is about the code. And then you have the infrastructure security, which you are explaining very well about the network security models and then the policies that we have to use. And I think it's really interesting that if we can control it at an organization level, I think bringing consistency will be very, very easier, because today it's very hard in any organization, huge organization specifically, that they won't know what kind of policies another business unit is following, right? And because of that, there will be lots of reinvention of wheels and lots of inconsistencies. And to be frank, there will be lots of outages that because of that least knowledges, we don't know what is blocked in the other firewall, for example.
Yeah.
It's a very, very interesting topic. Actually, there are lots of things. I think it's a topic for its own to discuss around it.
Looking at the partnership, they already built it for this one, right? They already have a good partnership with this Fortify and all the networking equipment already, which was controlling the whole picture so far. Right? How much ever cloud you get into, but before that, normally people tend to keep one of the firewall to make sure that things are in place. So this is going to be a very good one. Even they have a very good partnership with the Datadog, which can give us enough metrics what's happening around that. So
yeah, they are combining with the right expertise in their product. Like for example, if you take security, again they are not going with the firewall alone. They are getting into the SIEM level, and then they are particularly getting into Kubernetes security level. So they understand the security market very well, and they are partnering with the right partners. And even we have an option to import their inbuilt rules. Like each and every partner is giving some rules, security rules. If you are not able to write your own rules, the rules are available in handy. You can import it and you can explore it further. That option they are providing.
I think if we look at the overall AWS reInvent, the way they released it, right? They looked at the 5 pillars of the well-architected framework. They had the definite one tool at the operations excellence, one for the security, as Ravi was talking about. Then they had couple of reliability parts covered as part of it. Then they covered the performance and then also the cost optimization part. So if you look at the flow, looks like it's going in the similar pattern of what they suggest, right? And they are also giving importance to the well-architected framework and making sure they have the innovation in these places. So that's very important to keep building those. Otherwise, the moment we adopt those and it becomes stale after some time.
Yeah, it's all these are interesting topics. The last domain that I wanted to touch base is around data lakes. This is just an example. I think lots of people are having huge number of data these days, and then I know lots of organizations are moving towards data lake concept, pushing data. It's no more data warehouses, right? It's data lakes, right? So it's not just about querying and then generating some report. It's about analyzing it further, predicting things, and then feeding it into ML and AI models, and then understanding your whole data that you have collected for centuries, years, and then making use of the data in a way that can help the organization build the business, grow the business, make it closer towards the customers, right? So there is one interesting. Yeah.
Data is new oil. So
yeah.
Data is new oil.
Exactly.
How about gold and platinum?
This is one interesting talk that I said. I will try to stick to this single slide. I won't go much further on this. But this is an interesting one from Nationwide, who is part of insurance organization, like more than a century now. It's more a century-old organization. And then it's about how they actually made something called governed data lake using AWS. The presentation was given by Jeff Anderson. He's an enterprise architect there. And then, of course, he was presenting along with an AWS architect about the solution they put in place. It is again an interesting part because it's a new domain, a new solution that was being done, right? So they were making use of S3. S3, its notifications, queuing, the glue, and then of course Kubernetes, and not to mention the Aurora and their own on their own marketplace, right? Where they're actually exposing their open data for others to use as well. So they were the key requirements that they had in mind is they had different business units, and they don't want different business units data to stay in other unit, right? They want at least part of the data to be shared across. So there was a huge argument, like any other organization, whether the data should be centrally managed or the data should be distributed. Then if it's distributed, how will make a correlation between this data, and if you need to make any combined reports and things like that. And then they figured a way to do it, and this is the solution they have put in place, right? The first one is, say, some kind of configuration file, and the data file is coming in. Data file could be anything. It could be their insurance policy or whatever document, and then the data configuration file will explain about some metadata along with that, like details about how to process that file and things like that. And the contents are pushed into an Amazon queue, so that this is the messaging part that we talked in the beginning of the session, where to make it asynchronous and then less dependent, loose coupling. So of course that's what they are using. They are actually pushing it to a queue, and then that's also getting stored, and then this is getting processed by a Kubernetes processor, right? Which is actually processing this data. While this is happening, they are also cataloging this data internally using AWS Glue, and they are using something called AWS Lake Formation, which was recently introduced, which will give an access to another account in another business unit. So for every business unit, they have a separate AWS account. Now it's more like an AWS account sharing, right? So they were able to share part of this catalog into another a small catalog that's there in another business unit, and that way they were able to split this data across business units but still keeping the processing in a single place, so that they don't want to keep the processing across in different units because they will end up in different designs and then the consistency will go away. So they keep the design processing part in a single business unit, and then it actually processes the and catalog the data and shared across. And then of course each business unit will have their own Athena servers to run the queries or build the reports and do some analytics around this data, right? And they were using Kubernetes for actually auto scaling and processing this data. And then they were pushing the metrics to Aurora DB. Just interesting to see that they are pushing to metrics to Aurora DB, but they are claiming these metrics are not like an infrastructure metrics, right? These are the metrics about the customer sentiments, metrics about based on the customer data that they have read through. That these are like useful metrics for them to understand about the customer. Probably they can analyze about the churn rate of the customer based on this, right? And then this was actually then also it was automatically pushed towards their own open data based marketplace where people can go and actually use that data if they want to use it for some other purpose, like some kind of census or survey they want to use. They can use this open data, which is like, of course, the data that is not doesn't need to be so secure, right? The key takeaway is the point that he mentioned is his CEO always mentions you have a huge number of data, and I want as much as data to be accessible by every associate in my organization. Of course, considering the data's privacy and stuff like that, the data that can be accessed by everyone should be accessible by everyone. So it should not be stuck with a single data team managing things, right? So I think in that manner they were able to put this architecture in place where this whole access is given across business units, but still the processing is controlled, the technology is controlled in a single place. That way that it's consistently processed in the same way. And then of course the upgrades are very simpler because it's in single place, but still they were able to share it across the business units. So data is there, make it accessible, and also make sure that every business unit is having the data that they own, and there's also a way to combine data and prepare reports, and also to push it towards an open marketplace is their high-level requirement for this solution. And as you see, they are used SQS, and they were also used SNS. For example, if some user has pushed the data into a file into the S3, and because of that event, it actually started processing, they might be interested to know whether my file is processed or uploaded or whatever they were expecting out of the file. So they will be getting an SNS notification out of it. So that's interesting thing that that's a domain, data lake domain, which was using AWS as a provider, which was again very interesting. So that's one of the key things that I liked. Like such a huge organization is also using, and of course I can imagine the huge number of data that they will be processing and analyzing and storing. I think that's an important thing that we should be remembering when we are actually when we are going to process data across the organization based on our customers or wherever we are. Right. Anything else that you guys want to add?
I was just remembering when Rafiq told that data is a new oil, right? And now I don't know how many of our colleagues are streaming this live, but I am definitely sure that there are many thousands of people. They are streaming Netflix, which is StreamFest or something, which is free for 2 days. And basically,
maybe that's the reason why we don't have. It's probably don't have lots of live subscribers here because they are watching Netflix. It's only free for 2 days in India.
And like Rafiq said, all Netflix collects is their mobile numbers, and then earlier they used to collect the credit card details and everything, but now they are collecting their email IDs and like their mobile numbers and anything, so that they can be more aggressive in their strategy, so that once they have used this 2 days stream, so that they can pull in large people inside. So yeah, data is everything, I guess, for at least for the foreseeable future. Yeah,
they'll
definitely
catch the pattern the way you're going to use and what makes you more interesting in the Netflix, and they'll keep tempting you for next couple of months, and whenever you get the salary, then the Netflix also will say that okay, now we have the subscription further free for you. So yeah. Definitely. I think the way it can be
used. Not to forget, you'll be one of their Canary clients as well. Like they will be testing their beta versions. Not just Netflix. I think that's the way to do. The trial users and the free users. Yeah, They are the Canary users. But
the beta.
there is an advantage.
Yes.
There's a good and bad about it. you get to know the latest features quickly, but of course it can be a little flaky. But that's okay. It's free. Don't complain.
There are no mistakes. Somebody is trying something new. That's it. If there is no mistake, they are just on the same for years together, right? Yeah.
Right. I think we are right on time. Is there anything else that we want to summarize? I would like to just summarize the topics that we have seen. I would also update the description with the links of the slides and of course the headings that we talked about. I'll try to also provide timelines so that people can go to a particular part of the video and then easily view it. So who is watching live, do share it across, and who is going to watch it offline, make sure that you are subscribed and if you're not already part of our channel. So in summary of what we have done so far, I think we started with the keynotes. We moved towards serverless, which was like the key thing, and then we also touched base around containers. We talked about the networking security patterns. We talked about microservices architectures and patterns, and then we ended with data lake at the end. So these are we have summarized, and this covers most of the domain that was covered in this 1 week's AWS session. But again, don't underestimate it's 1 week, but it was like parallel sessions going on across 50 tracks. There was a huge number of information coming in. So even if you are unable to watch the overall weeks, I think this will give a good summary of what was discussed and the important topics that were discussed. Of course, the initial meeting we discussed about the latest updates, but this will give a overview for the important things that were really presented in the AWS ReInvent. And to add to that, it was very real. I think it's very rarely we get a chance like this talking about topics that are in future, like not actually used within the organization, with people around with different ideas, talking about what's coming new and interacting. I think more than presenting it, I like the way that we all interacted here, whoever is live, and thanks for joining me here. I think it was very interesting to have different perspectives around different things that we are putting in place. I hope everybody will like it, like watching this.
Yeah, definitely. Different perspective is something because all other information people can just watch the video and figure it out. But people from the different industry and different expertise here, right? That makes a lot of difference in terms of real use cases we are doing it. And just one more thing which maybe we did not cover, just for people who are very new to AWS, right? AWS almost made most of the certifications free. If you log in there, there's a certification section there. They kept most of the certification as a free thing. I think those who want to use it, I think should use it now. During pandemic situation, many people are working from home. One of the opportunities is to learn as much as you can. This is like a golden era. One side is like a pandemic, but another side is like you have these opportunities everywhere. At least if you can try our commute time, that's more than enough.
Well, and there is no commute time left anymore anyway. Commuting across rooms is the only commuting that you do. Add to that, I think in our channel we already published two certification related videos. One is around the EKS certifications. Kubernetes Administrator CCAT, not EKS. Sorry. Is a CCAT CKA certification, Certified Kubernetes Administrator, and also another video around Terraform Associate, which Ravi here actually presented. You must go and check if you're going to take certifications, any of these two certifications. And don't miss coming up is GCP certifications, tips and tricks, and also about the exam structure from Rajesh, who is here. It will be mostly published during this month. So subscribe to the channel so that you will get the notification when we publish it and be a part of it. And we will be, and there is a link to Discord channel that we have created a Discord server to continue this discussion across. So make sure that you hit the link to it and then come join us. It's there as part of the description. And then in a couple of days, I'll start adding links to all these videos that we discussed here and also the slide that we have shown here as a part of the description. So you can come back and check the description to get those links and download the resources. So thanks for being here. for all the people who are watching, people who will be watching, and for the people who were discussing along with me sitting in front of me.
Thank you all. Lovely discussion.
Enjoy the rest of
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.